don't know the whole story," I whispered to myself, as I stepped through the polished glass doors of the Metropolitan Museum, the faint echo of my heels bouncing against the marble floor. The morning sunlight streamed through the vast windows, catching dust motes in the air like tiny suspended stars, and I paused just inside the entrance, my hand brushing the silver chain at my throat, the anchor pendant smooth and familiar under my fingers. Elena Carter, 27, independent and utterly exhausted from working late nights at the local art center. I reminded myself, shaking off the creeping unease that had been building ever since I received that cryptic email. The museum was nearly empty, quiet, except for the soft hum of the climate control system and the occasional clatter of a security guard's radio. My steps echoed louder than expected, and for a brief second, I felt the old familiar tension in my chest, the kind that had been with me for as long as I could remember whenever I entered a room that should have been safe, but never felt entirely so. That was when I saw him, leaning casually against the far side of the grand atrium, his dark hair catching the sunlight in streaks of chestnut, and the tailored navy suit perfectly pressed. Dominic Blackwood, or at least that's the name I had learned over the years. The man whose presence always seemed to bend the space around him, whose gaze could cut through the crowded streets, and now standing alone in the museum. He looked like he owned every shadow that stretched across the marble tiles. His piercing blue eyes lifted from the exhibition catalog he had been pretending to read and found mine, and it was like a current ran through the empty hall, tightening my chest and quickening my pulse. My hand instinctively went to my necklace, the pendant I had barely thought about this morning, the one my grandmother had given me before she passed. A piece of metal that carried more memories than I could articulate. Memories that I now realized were at the center of whatever storm was brewing in his mind. Dominic stepped forward, his movements measured, deliberate, and the click of his polished shoes against the floor was the only sound in the wide atrium as he approached. I could feel the temperature shift around him, a weight pressing down that was equal parts authority and unspoken expectation. He stopped just a few feet away, his gaze locking onto the pendant, and for a moment the air seemed to hold its breath. I swallowed hard, my voice caught somewhere between a whisper and a shiver, and managed, "It's just a necklace," as if saying it aloud would make the world normal again. Dominic's lips pressed to a line, his eyes narrowing slightly, reading something I could not decipher, and then he glanced calm but firm. "Where did you get that?" My pulse leapt, and I stammered, I bought it at a thrift store, years ago." He tilted his head slightly, considering, the weight of his scrutiny making it difficult to breathe. "Years ago," he echoed, the words hanging like a challenge. My mind raced, recalling half-forgotten stories my grandmother used to tell. The reason I had worn this chain every day since she gave it to me, and the realization struck like a flash. Whatever connection this man to the past, it was tied to this small, seemingly insignificant piece of metal against my skin. The hall felt impossibly large and suffocating at the same time, and I found myself stepping backward instinctively, yet my feet felt rooted. Dominic didn't move, only extended a single hand, a silent invitation and a warning all at once. "You've carried this for years," he said softly, "and I've been looking for it, and for you." My heart raced, a mixture of fear, confusion, and something else I couldn't name, the air thick with the weight of memories neither of us had spoken of yet. I realized then that nothing in my life up to this moment had prepared me for what was about to unfold, that the quiet morning at the museum was no longer safe, that the truth he had hidden for 11 years was about to catch up with both of us. And I had no choice but to step forward and face it, knowing that every heartbeat drew me closer to revelations I was both desperate and terrified to understand. The soft hum of the museum around me seemed to thicken, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat in my chest as Dominic remained still, his gaze fixed on the anchor pendant at my throat. I could feel a tension that was not meant to be threatening but demanded my attention, a quiet command embedded in the way he held himself. I adjusted the strap of my bag nervously, wishing the floor would open and swallow me whole, yet unable to turn away from those piercing eyes that had tracked me since the moment I entered. He took a step closer and the polished marble reflected the sun in a way that made his presence seem almost luminous, impossible to ignore. Dominic did not speak immediately, letting the silence stretch and tighten around me, a deliberate pause that made every nerve in my body hum with anticipation. I could hear my own breath, shallow and rapid, each exhale a reminder of the months I had spent trying to ignore this part of my history, the unanswered questions that had nagged at the edges of my mind since I could first remember, the feeling that something important had always been missing. Then he spoke, low and steady. "Emily, you do not understand the significance of what you carry with you." The words were simple, but they carried weight, a gravity that seemed to bend the very air between us. My fingers tightened on the pendant, the metal cool against my skin, and I whispered almost to myself, "I think I do, but I do not know how." Dominic tilted his head, observing me with an intensity that made my pulse jump, the sunlight catching the faint flecks of blue in his eyes and making it seem both distant and impossibly close at the same time. "You have spent years believing this was just a piece of jewelry, a simple keepsake. You were wrong. It has always been a marker, a story you have yet to read." My mind spun, trying to recall anything that could make sense of his words. The scattered memories of my grandmother, the vague mentions of a family I had never truly known, the stories half remembered and half forgotten, all swirling together like water in a storm. I swallowed hard, the sound loud in my own ears, and found myself taking a small step forward despite the unease pressing against my chest. Dominic noticed, a faint nod acknowledging my movement, and he finally spoke again. "You have carried a legacy without knowing it, Emily. A truth hidden not by accident but by necessity." The hall felt smaller suddenly, the expanse of marble and light shrinking around us, as though the museum itself leaned in to witness this exchange. I could not move, my body frozen in a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Yet my mind raced to connect the threads of half-remembered events, old photographs tucked in drawers, letters my grandmother had kept hidden. "Why now?" I asked, voice trembling despite my efforts to steady it. Dominic's eyes softened, just enough for me to glimpse a depth that had nothing to do with authority or power, a flicker of something human beneath the composed exterior. "Because the time has come for you to understand. For 11 years I have watched and waited, ensuring that when the moment arrived, you would be ready, or as ready as anyone could be, for what lies ahead." I sink in, the weight of a past I had never fully seen pressing against the front of my mind. My hand moved to adjust the necklace, as though physically connecting to the years I had unknowingly carried. And in that motion I felt a small spark of recognition, a memory of warmth and light from a time long before the world had taught me caution. Dominic took another step closer, just enough to bridge the distance, yet not imposing, his presence commanding without a word. "You will have questions," he continued, "and answers will not be simple. But they exist, and they start here, with what you have been given, what you have protected, and what has always been yours to uncover." My heart hammered, a mixture of fear and curiosity driving me to lean forward slightly, to meet his gaze fully. And in that moment I understood the enormity of what was unfolding, that this encounter was not mere coincidence, that every choice I had made, every step I had taken to ignore my history, had led me to this quiet confrontation filled with the promise of revelation. The sun shifted, casting long shadows across the atrium, and for a brief instant the museum felt suspended, a world frozen between what had been hidden and what was about to be revealed, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the first words of truth to finally be spoken. Dominic did not immediately answer, his eyes holding mine, as if searching for something beyond what words could convey. I shifted slightly, the marble cold beneath my heels, and felt the weight of the morning pressing against my shoulders. Each sound in the atrium seemed magnified, the faint creak of a distant security gate, the soft murmur of air moving through vents, the subtle hum of electricity from the display lights. And yet, despite the quiet, the tension between us felt almost tangible, a current connecting the space from his stance to mine. I could not move my gaze away from the anchor pendant resting against my collarbone, the metal cool and unassuming, yet carrying the resonance of a story I had never fully understood until this moment. Dominic finally spoke, his voice deliberate and controlled. "I have watched over you from a distance, ensuring that the truth would not reach you before you were ready." His words were measured, neither threatening nor comforting, but layered with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. I inhaled sharply, feeling a rush of air that seemed too thin, and whispered, "Watched over me?" All these years, his expression remained unreadable, though there was a faint tightening around his eyes that hinted at an emotion I could not name. "It was necessary," he continued, "to protect what you were unaware you carried, and to safeguard the path that you would need to walk to understand it fully." I shifted my weight, hands fidgeting with the strap of my bag, trying to reconcile the fragments of memory I had held onto with the reality of his presence, the gravity of his words threading through my mind like invisible stitches. Dominic stepped slightly closer, closing a fraction of the space between us, and I felt a subtle warmth radiating from his presence, a grounding force in contrast to the swirling uncertainty of my thoughts. "Emily," he said, his voice softer now, "there are questions you have had for as long as you can remember. There are gaps in your recollection, in the stories passed down, in the moments you never understood. Those gaps are no accident." My fingers tightened on the pendant instinctively, as though holding onto the small piece of metal could anchor me against the rush of revelation. I swallowed hard, a lump forming in my throat, and murmured, "I do not understand any of it." Dominic's gaze softened just enough for me to sense the trace of empathy beneath the deliberate composure. "You will," he said, "but first you must see, you must remember, and you must be willing to follow the path that has been laid before you, even if it is uncomfortable." The sound of my own heartbeat filled the space between his measured words, and I realized that every step I had taken to avoid the shadows of the past had brought me precisely to this confrontation. The sunlight shifted subtly, casting long stripes across the marble floor, and in that changing light, I could see not only Dominic's composed exterior, but also the careful watchfulness in his posture, the way he measured each movement as though calculating the precise moment to reveal truths long withheld. I took a tentative step forward, closing the last few feet between us, and felt a mixture of fear and curiosity tightening in my chest. "What do I need to know?" I asked, voice low but steady despite the flutter in my stomach. Dominic's eyes never left mine as he extended a hand, a simple gesture that carried both invitation and an unspoken promise. "Start with the memory that you have pushed aside, the one you do not yet recognize," he said. "That is where your story begins and where you will find the first piece of the truth you have sought without knowing it." I inhaled deeply, the cool air filling my lungs, and nodded, realizing that the morning light, the grand atrium, and the anchor pendant were all now a threshold. Crossing it would not be easy, but the time had come to face the reality that had waited for 11 years, that every unanswered question, every half-forgotten recollection, was about to unfold in the presence of the man who had guarded it with relentless patience. And as I extended my hand hesitantly to meet his, I felt the first tangible connection to a past that had silently guided me to this very moment. The air in the gallery seemed to hum with anticipation as I traced the edges of the photographs, Dominic standing beside me with a quiet, deliberate presence that both calmed and unsettled me at the same time. The sunlight slanting through the frosted windows cast soft beams across the marble floor, catching in the subtle curves of the sculptures and highlighting the small, deliberate details that had eluded my attention until now. Each image, each object, seemed to resonate with a story I had only half remembered, threads of a life lived with guidance I had not yet understood. Dominic spoke softly, yet with a precision that carried weight in the hushed space. "Every detail was placed with intention, Emily. Nothing you see here is random. The patterns, the moments, the objects, they were all prepared to guide you to this understanding." I drew in a slow breath, feeling a shiver of comprehension threading through my chest. The realization that the pendant, the sculptures, the photographs, and even the way the light fell across the floor had been arranged in a way that mirrored my own hidden memories. My fingers lingered on the pendant, the metal cool and grounding, as I let my eyes scan the displays once more, recognizing the subtle cues I had overlooked before, the gestures and angles that aligned perfectly with recollections I had tucked away in corners of my mind. Dominic moved slightly closer, the faint scent of his cologne blending with the soft aroma of aged stone and paper, a reassuring anchor as my thoughts swirled. You have spent years unaware of how closely life has been observed, not in surveillance but in care, he continued, his voice a steady presence. The steps you took, the choices you made, they were always part of a larger picture, a mosaic you were not yet ready to see. I swallowed, feeling the weight of his words, and whispered, "It feels like my entire life has been a map I could not read." Dominic's eyes softened, human, threading through the composed authority he exuded. "It has been a map, and now the compass is in your hands. You are seeing what was always meant to guide you." My heart raced, the rhythm echoing against the high ceilings, and I realized that the gallery, the light and Dominic's measured guidance were aligning to reveal the first layers of truths that had been carefully preserved. I stepped closer to the photographs, noticing the subtle ways they reflected moments of connection, small gestures of care, and patterns that had been embedded across time. Each discovery sparked a mixture of awe and apprehension, a tension that gripped my chest as I pieced together fragments of memory with the tangible evidence before me. Dominic did not speak again immediately, allowing the quiet to stretch, giving space for my mind to absorb the significance. Yet his presence reminded me that the unfolding revelations were deliberate, purposeful, and meant to be understood fully. I let my gaze linger on the pendant once more, the anchor now seeming to symbolize not only memory, but the careful guidance and patience that had allowed me to arrive at this moment of clarity. With a deep, steadying breath, I looked up at Dominic, feeling both the weight and the relief of understanding beginning to bloom, knowing that the next steps would continue to unveil the carefully concealed truths of my past, and that the museum, with its light, its objects, and its quiet authority, had become a vessel carrying me toward comprehension I had long sought, patiently waiting for the courage to fully recognize it. The quiet of the gallery seemed to deepen as Dominic guided me to a secluded corner where the lighting was softer, the glass display cases reflecting subtle hints of color from the paintings above. I felt my pulse quicken, the anticipation coiling in my chest as if each step I took forward tightened an invisible thread that connected me not only to the objects around me, but to the history I was only now beginning to uncover. Dominic stopped beside a small, unassuming display case and gestured for me to look closer, the precision of his movement commanding attention without force. Inside, delicate letters and faded photographs lay side by side, the papers brittle but intact, each one a fragment of a story carefully preserved across time. I reached forward, hesitating, my fingers brushing the glass, tracing the outline of a photograph of a young girl I instantly recognized as myself, though the setting was one I had long thought forgotten. "These were kept for you," Dominic said quietly, his voice steady yet underlined with a gravity that made the words land heavily in the still air. "They were meant to survive until you were ready to see them, until you could understand their significance." I drew in a slow breath, feeling the weight of 11 years of obscured truths pressing on me, and whispered, "Why did no one ever tell me?" His eyes softened, the intensity that had defined him since the moment we met now tempered with a trace of empathy. "Because you had to live your life without it influencing every step, without it shaping your choices prematurely. Some truths require timing to be meaningful, to be fully understood." I felt a shiver run down my spine as I traced my eyes over the letters, seeing fragments of handwriting that felt intimately familiar, echoing stories my grandmother had once told, pieces of advice and memory encoded in the careful curl of a letter, the tilt of a signature. Dominic leaned slightly closer, just enough that his presence was grounding, yet still allowing me the space to absorb each revelation at my own pace. "Every object, every letter, every photograph carries a piece of the path you were to follow," he said, gesturing to the collection before us. "They are not just remnants of the past, Emily. They are markers for understanding, guides to the truths that have always surrounded you, even when you were unaware." My chest tightened with a mixture of awe and disbelief, the realization that my life had been quietly orchestrated in ways I had not imagined, that the seemingly mundane details of childhood, the forgotten stories and overlooked objects were all part of a deliberate tapestry, a legacy carefully laid out to be discovered when the time was right. I swallowed the sensation, both thrilling and intimidating, and asked softly, "And now, Now that I see it, what am I supposed to do? Dominic's gaze met mine fully unwavering, the subtle warmth in his expression inviting trust. You observe, you reflect, and you let the pieces fall into place, he replied. You allow yourself to understand not just the history, but your own role within it. The story was never about what was hidden from you. It was about preparing you to recognize the truth for yourself. I felt a shift within me, a gentle uncoiling of tension as comprehension began to settle, and in that shared stillness, I realized that the gallery, the photographs, the letters, and Dominic's presence were all converging into a single coherent moment, one in which the past I had long ignored and the present I now faced aligned with a clarity I had never anticipated. The soft light of the morning, the polished marble beneath my feet, and the careful arrangement of every object created a sanctuary for revelation. And as I took a slow, deliberate step closer to Dominic, my hand brushing lightly against the pendant that had guided me here, I understood that the truths I had sought for so long were finally within reach, unfolding patiently and deliberately in a space that felt both sacred and intimately mine. Dominic's gaze held mine with a quiet intensity that made the air between us feel charged, the gallery around us fading into a soft blur as the sunlight shifted and stretched across the polished marble floor. Each display seemed suddenly alive, reflecting not only history but the intricate web of connections I had carried unknowingly, the small anchor pendant at my throat feeling heavier with significance as I traced it with my fingers. "Emily," Dominic said, voice low and measured. "The truth has always been here, patiently waiting for you to see it." I swallowed, my pulse quickening, feeling the weight of 11 years of hidden knowledge pressing on my mind and heart simultaneously. His eyes softened ever so slightly, the controlled intensity revealing a sliver of human warmth beneath the composed authority he maintained. I took a small step forward, drawn by both curiosity and the magnetic pull of his presence, feeling the sunlight catch the blue flecks in his eyes, and it was as though I could see the passage of time reflected there, the patience, the care, and the silent vigilance that had brought me to this precise moment. Dominic gestured toward the archival photographs and letters, subtle movements guiding my gaze without overt command, each piece now revealing layers of meaning I had been too young or too unaware to recognize. "Every detail you have overlooked, every object you held dear, was part of a larger story," he continued, his tone even but imbued with quiet urgency. "It has been carefully preserved, and now you have the chance to understand it fully." I traced my fingers across the glass, feeling the contours of my own childhood captured in images, the tilt of a head, the curve of a hand, and a spark of recognition flaring in my chest as memories long buried surfaced like sunlight through clouds. Dominic's presence beside me was grounding, a silent assurance that this journey of revelation was deliberate, that I was not merely witnessing history but stepping into it with both eyes open. "You have questions," he said softly, "and the answers you seek are here. Not handed to you, not given freely, but waiting to be found through observation, reflection, and courage." My chest tightened, a mixture of apprehension and anticipation threading through my veins, and I realized that every cautious step, every careful choice in my past had been preparing me for this confrontation with truth. The light shifted again, casting long, warm streaks across the marble, and in that quiet moment, I understood that what had been hidden was never meant to obscure me, but to guide me, to prepare me for comprehension that required patience and discernment. I exhaled slowly, letting the gravity of the revelation settle, feeling the pendant against my skin as both a connection to the past and a symbol of the path forward. Dominic's eyes held mine unwaveringly, a silent promise of guidance and the expectation that I would take the knowledge I had gained and allow it to shape my understanding. The gallery, the light, and the carefully preserved objects converged in a moment of clarity, and I felt a tentative yet profound sense of readiness bloom within me, a recognition that the truths of my history, long concealed, were now unfolding with deliberate grace, and that from this point forward, each step I took would be guided by awareness, understanding, and the quiet, unyielding presence of someone who had waited 11 years to ensure I was prepared to see it all. The morning sunlight shifted to a warmer golden hue as it filtered through the tall, frosted windows of the gallery, casting elongated patterns across the marble floor that seemed to guide my gaze toward Dominic. I felt the cool weight of the pendant against my chest, the anchor a constant grounding presence as the culmination of the revelation settled around me. Dominic remained beside me, his posture steady, commanding without a word, yet his eyes carried a quiet invitation to trust, to accept what had been hidden for so long. I inhaled slowly, letting the clarity of the moment seep into every thought, every memory, feeling a connection not only to the objects surrounding me, but to the intricate path of understanding that had led me here. "You have seen the pieces," Dominic said softly, "and now you have the chance to make sense of the whole. The story was never simply in the photographs, the letters, or the sculptures. It has been in you all along, in the way you remembered, the choices you made, the life you built unaware of the guidance surrounding you." My fingers brushed the cool metal of the pendant, tracing its smooth surface, and I felt a ripple of comprehension spread through me, the past and present merging in a moment of profound recognition. The gallery with its high ceilings and filtered light seemed suspended in time, every detail deliberately arranged to draw me forward, to reveal the narrative I had unknowingly followed for years. Dominic stepped slightly closer, the faint scent of his cologne blending with the quiet atmosphere, his presence steady and unwavering as though he had been quietly orchestrating the encounter to coincide with my readiness to understand. "Emily," he continued, his voice carrying both authority and the faintest hint of reassurance, "the truths you have discovered are only the beginning. You will need to carry them with awareness, allowing each piece to inform not just what you know, but how you move forward, how you live with the knowledge of what has always been there." I nodded, feeling the gravity of his words pressing gently but insistently on my consciousness, the sense that every memory, every artifact, every carefully preserved detail had been part of a deliberate and unbroken chain. The light shifted again, brushing across the photographs in the display case, illuminating edges that had previously been unnoticed, revealing connections that clicked into place in my mind, a quiet symphony of understanding forming in real time. Dominic's gaze did not waver, holding mine with a patience that invited trust and a silent assurance that the unfolding truth was now fully mine to hold. I felt the steady pulse of awareness in my chest, the thrill of discovery tempered by the weight of responsibility. And in that moment, the gallery became a vessel for clarity, a place where past and present converged in harmony. I drew a deep, deliberate breath, the warmth of the sunlight filling my lungs, and extended my hand slightly toward Dominic, a gesture acknowledging the shared journey, the readiness to embrace the knowledge long concealed, knowing that from this point forward, each step I took would be guided by both the revelations of the past and the careful, patient presence of someone who had waited 11 years to ensure I was prepared to understand. And as our eyes met, I felt the quiet power of truth finally settling, a profound awareness that the path forward was mine to navigate with clarity, insight, and the enduring resonance of the legacy I had just begun to fully comprehend.